Yes, guys, you know what time it is. It's your boy Jack here at the Irish Hotspur, and we're going to be bringing you a detailed guide to Tottenham's managerial shortlist. One of these on this list in front of you, everybody, will replace Antonio Conte. So we thought we'd give you everything that you need to know on the potential candidates to replace Conte. A lot of research and extra effort did go into the making of this video, everybody. So let's please like it if you can, especially if you do enjoy it. Hit that like button. Let's try to get over 100 likes, please, if we can. But everybody, Conte's sacking is imminent. After Conte's outburst in his post-match press conference, it was unlikely he was going to continue as manager at Tottenham Hotspur after the international break. Many even saw his outburst as his own manner of kind of quitting the job. Matt Law, the Daily Telegraph, even wrote that Tottenham are expected to part ways with Antonio Conte later this week. Dave Heitner of The Guardian wrote as well that THFC have begun to check the market for a new manager and a sign that they are ready to accelerate the departure of Antonio Conte. So who will be in charge versus Everton, everybody? If Spurs were to have an interim manager while they wait for their top choice to sign, it looks like it could be Ryan Mason, according to Matt Law of the Daily Telegraph, who would be in charge versus Everton if they don't sign a manager in time, everybody. But Spurs might be accelerating the process of hiring a new manager. The final decision on Conte's future could be decided very soon. And according to Dan Kilpatrick of the Evening Standard, Paratici is understood to currently be heading the Spurs managerial succession planning and is probably drawing up a list for the potential candidates and is understood to be maybe topped by Luis Enrique. But also, everybody, there's been kind of conflicting reports suggesting that Paratici as well could be maybe headed his way with Antonio Conte. He could be headed out the door as well. And maybe his future is sort of intertwined with Conte. And also maybe some of the decisions he's made so far has probably made him sackable by Daniel Levy. But this is going to be Spurs's managerial shortlist here, everybody. Right in front of you, we have Ruben Amorim, Maurizio Pochettino, Roberto De Zerbi, Luis Enrique, Thomas Tuchel, Oliver Glasner, Thomas Frank, and Ange Postecoglou. And in this video, everybody, we are going to be breaking down all these managerial candidates, but also bear in mind that we are going to be spending a lot longer on the managers that seem more likely to be taking the job, according to various Spurs journalists and whatnot, and also according to various Spurs sort of inside sources. We're going to be spending greater deal on the ones that we actually think have a better chance of maybe getting the Spurs job. So let's maybe rule out the unlikely ones. Thomas Frank, the first one here, and it's probably the reason being is because he's very happy at Brentford. He said he's very happy at Brentford, and he recently signed a new 3.5-year deal. He's building something special over there, I would say, too. So why would he want to abandon that? And would also Spurs be willing to wait for Thomas Frank at the end of the season? I think likely not. He also is one of the only ones on this list, if not is the only one on this list, that doesn't actually have any trophies under his belt and doesn't have any experience in European football too. Roberto De Zerbi over at Brighton, he really only just joined there halfway through the first part of this season. He also verbally criticized Caicedo and his agent when they were linked with the move over to Arsenal. I think this would sort of suggest then that he has a bit of club loyalty, but also maybe too, if he were to now all of a sudden kind of go back on that and go to Spurs, he might look like a bit of a hypocrite, if you will. Spurs also do need a manager again, like right now. And so is Roberto De Zerbi willing to, all of a sudden change club again? And also, would Spurs then be willing, if he were to leave at the end of the season, would they be willing to wait that long for him? Maybe not. And then also Ange Postecoglou, I feel like he's a very inexperienced manager in Europe. It would be also a huge step up for him to go from the Scottish League to the Premier League, and his Celtic side really did not perform that well actually in the Champions League. So it seems like it could be a really big gamble for Spurs to go after him. And I do really apologize, Australian fans, because I do know he's very loved by you guys, and he does play a progressive brand of football. I don't get me wrong. Oliver Glasner, though, the reason we're ruling him out is because Fabrizio Romano said via YouTube yesterday that Tottenham have other priorities other than Oliver Glasner, and there's no chance he leaves Frankfurt in the middle of the season. So there's nothing really concrete or close there, everybody. So now we have really, the opportunity here to chat about all of the managers who actually do have a good chance of getting the job. And that list that we've devised here over at the Irish Hotspur is Thomas Tuchel, the former Chelsea boss, Luis Enrique, the former Barcelona manager and Spain international manager, Ruben Amorim, the current Sporting manager, and the one and only Maurizio Pochettino.
Mauricio Pochettino, the fans' favourite and many Spurs fans' preferred choice, as many feel he deserved the chance to rebuild the squad when he was sacked the first time round. Pochettino built his reputation on impressive work at Espanyol and Southampton. At Southampton, Pochettino led the team to an 8th place finish, the highest league position since 2002-2003. And it was at Southampton where he caught Tottenham's attention. Pochettino was appointed Tottenham manager on May 2014. Pochettino was Tottenham's 10th manager in 12 years and had a massive job on his hands coming into the club. It was at Tottenham Pochettino would go on to announce himself on the global stage. He turned Tottenham from a team performing according to their financial weight into a team punching above its financial powers. He turned Tottenham into Premier League title contenders and Champions League finalists. In his first season, he guided Spurs to a League Cup final, losing 2-0 to Chelsea, and guided us to a 5th place finish. In his first season, he also promoted several youth academy products into first team regulars. Harry Kane at the expense of Sadado being the most notable. He also oversaw the emergence of other young English talent like Dele Alli, Eric Dyer and Harry Winks in his time. A 2-2 draw at Chelsea in the 15-16 season saw Tottenham hand the league title to Leicester City, and 3 defeats in our final 3 games that followed meant we ended up finishing 3rd behind Arsenal. When Pochettino signed a new contract in 2016, his role changed from manager to head coach. Moving forward into the 17-18 season, we got off to an absolute flyer with Tottenham going 12 games unbeaten run, losing our first game in November to Chelsea. Spurs finished the second season on 86 points, our highest ever tally in the Premier League. In fact, it was our highest finish in the league since Bill Nickerson. In December 2018, Pochettino won his 100th Premier League match as manager of Tottenham. He became the first Tottenham manager to reach this milestone and the 3rd quickest Premier League manager to achieve the feat with a single club. May 2019, Pochettino led Tottenham to the first ever Champions League final after beating Ajax on away goals, with Tottenham coming back from a 2-0 deficit at half-time, where Lucas Moura sprung his magic to score a second-half hat-trick. We then went on to lose the final in Madrid 2-0 to Liverpool. On 19th of November 2019, Pochettino was sacked by Tottenham Hotspur, with us sitting 14th in the Premier League table, with chairman Daniel Levy citing extremely disappointing domestic results as the reason behind the dismissal. It was also worth noting that many young English players under Pochettino's tutelage at Southampton and Tottenham went on to play for the English national team. Silverware did elude Pochettino and Tottenham. The job Pochettino did at Spurs made him one of the game's highest sought-after managers. Now, moving into playing style and formation and a bit on his tactics, Pochettino is known for his high-pressing, attack-minded football. Pochettino does favour the 4-3-2-1 formation, which builds out from the back and looks to work with the ball into the box, keeping possession, also known for a 3-3-3 at times as well. With the wing-backs getting high and wide to create overlaps, to stretch the opposition's backline and support the attacking play, like we've seen with Danny Rose and Walker, or Trippier and Ben Davies at Tottenham in the past, all while doing it in an organised manner so that if we do end up losing possession, we already have people in place to press nice and high to be able to turn the ball over and win it back, which often led his Tottenham team to camping inside the opposition's half for long periods of the game. Now, at Tottenham, he also, and in general in his career, he loves to develop young talents. And at Tottenham, we have a lot of them. We've got Brian Gill, Jed Spence, Dane Scarlett, Harvey White, Alfie Devine, Destiny Adoji, Sarr, Skip. So you would like to think that he might want to cut his teeth into this project and bring the rebuild about. Pochettino once said he wants to come back to Tottenham one day to manage. The fans loved his style of play, the club, the players. We were all connected, going on one mad journey together. And my God, do I want them journeys back. The question is now the right time to bring him back? His style will also need an overhaul of the back line if we are to give him any chance of bringing that style back to Tottenham. Is the idea more romantical than logical? I desperately want these days back. The big question is, does Daniel Levy and the board? Now, let's move on to another ex-Chelsea manager, Thomas Tuchel.
The other ex-Chelsea boss, everybody, Thomas Tuchel, we're probably not happy seeing another ex-Chelsea boss linked with Spurs, but I would say he was an experienced youth coach and talent scout, and that's actually where he started out. He won the Bundesliga under-19 title with Stuttgart back in 2004-05, and I think that shows that he can work with the youth, but also shows that he's kind of come from maybe a bit of a humble beginning as well as for when it comes to his managerial career. And also, he left actually that Stuttgart under-19 team after winning the title due to maybe personality as well as conflict issues with the club. And that's something that seems to follow Thomas Tuchel throughout all the clubs that he's managed at. Eventually, he was, though, trusted to coach the Augsburg Bundesliga reserve team for the 2007-8 season, where Tuchel actually helped Nagelsmann transition from being a player to kickstarting his own coaching career there. Tuchel went on to become the manager of Mainz 05 in 2009, and he signed an initial 2-year contract there. And despite obviously having technically as well as kind of like maybe inferior players in general over at Mainz, Tuchel made up for that with a long ball sort of approach to the game where his team would basically knock it long into areas of the pitch and would surround the opposition in order to win the ball high up the pitch, but kind of winning those second balls high up in sort of in dangerous areas. And his first season actually at Mainz, he finished ninth in the table after Mainz had actually only just promoted the previous season from Bundesliga 5. The following campaign, he took Mainz to the Europa League qualification, and Mainz's side was really actually a high-scoring team and punching above their weight, I would say, with the fifth most goals scored that season in the Bundesliga. In his final season for the club in 2013-14, Tuchel took Mainz to a seventh-place finish, qualifying them for the group stages of the Europa League for the 2014-2015 campaign. Tuchel went on to leave Mainz in May that campaign, canceling his contract early, saying that he couldn't see how the team could reinvent itself once more the coming summer. So again, kind of leaving under really kind of you could say fiery circumstances. Borussia Dortmund, though, did come calling in 2014. Tuchel was hired to replace Jurgen Klopp. Dortmund actually believed at the time that Tuchel was the best option to reinvent, but also keep that pressing philosophy that Jurgen Klopp had left behind. Both Klopp and Tuchel also actually followed the same path of starting out as successful Mainz managers before going on to take the Borussia Dortmund job. In his debut season, Dortmund finished second and also finished 10 points behind Bayern's Pep Guardiola. And it's actually a club record of that season finishing there, but it also was a club record goal season for him in that Bundesliga season, despite finishing second. And it actually turned out to be a bit of an unlucky season because he also got knocked out by Jurgen Klopp in the Europa League and actually eventually lost to Pep Guardiola in the DFB Pokal final. So a very good debut season, just sort of kind of had, a bit of unluckiness to it. The following season, though, Tuchel did go on to win his first ever major trophy, winning the DFB Pokal. And then also Tuchel's time actually at Dortmund did end up being a bit short-lived after he was dismissed in 2017. He had a fractured as well as sort of strained relationship with the Dortmund hierarchy, especially the Dortmund CEO, Hans-Joachim Watzke, who described Thomas Tuchel as a difficult person. Reason for Tuchel's behaviors were that he basically didn't get the players he wanted, and the players he wanted to go didn't leave. And also maybe an example of his sort of fiery nature at Dortmund is when he banned the chief scout from training sessions altogether. And also then eventually he then moved to PSG in 2018. In his first season, he had Kylian Mbappe join him at the club for a measly 180 million euros. And also despite those large acquisitions, Tuchel did actually complain about a lack of improvement in fullback areas. In his first season, PSG broke the record for the best start to a season, winning 12 in a row. And also in his debut season, though, it did end a bit awkwardly. They won the league, I could say, a bit way too early. I think they won the league with almost like 6-7 games to go, but they actually got knocked out in the Champions League quite early by Man United. And then they also lost in the cup final to Rennes. So a bit of an awkward season there. In his second season, PSG stormed to a domestic treble with only the Champions League left after defeating Dortmund, Atalanta, and Leipzig on their way to that Champions League final, but they went on to lose to Hansi Flick's Bayern Munich 1-0. Tuchel's third season in charge with PSG was a bit rocky, and it actually ended up kind of coming to a close quite early after repeatedly clashing with Leonardo, the sporting director there. And Tuchel was actually said in an interview that he felt more like a politician than a coach over at PSG. And Chelsea, his time there was also short-lived, but you could say quite successful. He took over from the failing Frank Lampard. Tuchel set the Chelsea record, in fact, for the best ever start for a new coach, going on to a 13-match unbeaten run. Part of his success, I would say, was due to him switching back to a Chelsea three-man backline, and it also probably did a good job at kind of keeping out those goals and being a bit more pragmatic. That season, Tuchel took Chelsea past Real Madrid in the semifinals of the Champions League to eventually face Man City in the Champions League final. He goes on to beat Guardiola's Man City in that final to win his first ever and so far only European trophy. The following season was then, I feel like, a bit awkward. He kind of lost the FA Cup final to Liverpool, then went on to lose the Carabao Cup final to Liverpool as well. That's definitely maybe a bit unfortunate. And then also as well, he was knocked out by Real Madrid in the Champions League quite early. Tuchel, in his second full season with Chelsea, was under new ownership. Todd Boehly and Tuchel, let's say, just didn't get along. They clashed, and Todd Boehly saying that he was described as being a very difficult person to deal with, and was also kind of, leaving Tuchel in charge for a lot of the transfer strategy as well as recruitment. And I think Tuchel just didn't really vibe with that and really didn't like that. But let's talk maybe about Tuchel's tactics here. When it comes to Tuchel's tactics, I definitely would say he's very tactically flexible. He used the long ball and definitely used a high press over at Mainz, but also was able to get the best out of what you would say quite inferior players for the most part. And Tuchel is known to also be a bit of a disciplinarian and reportedly forbid his Mainz players from actually leaving the canteen if any players were actually still left eating their meal. He's definitely big on respect, you could say. At Dortmund, players, I would say, were playing more in between the lines. This is when he started to show a bit more tactical intelligence, and he also definitely still maintained that sort of high pressing system. He used more of a 4-2-3-1 as well as a 4-1-4-1 there, and players that really thrived, I think, in that system that he had over at Dortmund were players like Christian Pulisic. Ousmane Dembele, of course, was kind of just coming about. Aubameyang was really good as that lone striker running in behind for him. And then the creative players that really thrived in his system were players like Shinji Kagawa as well as Henrik Mkhitaryan as well. At PSG, he learned to really allow his players actually a bit more sort of flexibility because, of course, he was dealing over with the starlets as well as Hollywood players of Cavani, Di Maria, Neymar, and Mbappe. And you actually would say he probably found the best maybe system for that sort of front three of, players, get the most out of. He was very successful. And I actually think getting PSG to do some version of a press, you look at them nowadays where they basically just don't press at all. He was actually able to get PSG to do even a version of kind of the gegenpressing found over at Dortmund by Jurgen Klopp. He also found a good role, I think, for Neymar to be able to drop into those sort of half spaces sort of centrally to turn and sort of drive at the opposition defense and get them on that back foot. And if you really look at some of those PSG attacks that were led by Neymar in that road to the Champions League final, I would say some of them are absolutely devastating. And I do think a large part of that is maybe thanks due to Thomas Tuchel's tactical intelligence. At Chelsea, he's mostly deployed, I think, a 3-4-3 there. And there was a huge emphasis, you would definitely say, on, progression of the ball through the wing backs, maybe i.e. kind of Reece James, Ben Chilwell, those type of players. His Chelsea side, I think, were probably more possession dominant than maybe previous sides of his. And they were also maybe more defensively pragmatic, actually, as well. He restored Antonio Rudiger to the side as a left-sided center back and successfully actually got the best out of Jorginho in a two-man pivot too. He has definitely used, I think, innovative training methods such as cutting the corners off of pitches to improve passing in tight spaces as well as players' movement in those tight spaces. And he has also forced defenders to hold tennis balls to avoid fouling, unnecessarily, and also to maybe avoid fouling in order to win the ball, kind of teaching them to win it fairly. He's also obsessed everybody with Guardiola and has watched documentaries and plenty of tactical videos on the manager and has once had a 4-hour tactical conversation with him after a game between them when Pep was over at Bayern Munich. But now, everybody, let's talk about the other manager that Spurs are linked with, RUBEN AMORIM.
RUBEN AMORIM, the young gun who only started his managerial career in 2018 at Portuguese third league side Casa Pia. He then left Casa Pia to join Sporting Braga reserve team. He went in as manager there before 3 months later being appointed Braga first team manager because they were impressed with the work he was doing in the reserves. 3 weeks later, he won his first trophy, beating Porto in the Portuguese League Cup, a theme that would be common over his time in Portugal. In his time in charge of Braga, AMORIM only lost 2 games, which were in the Europa League to Rangers. 5 months after joining Braga, Amorim was announced as Sporting Lisbon manager. In the contract was included a 20 million buyout clause, which later, when he signed a new contract, it was up to 30 million euros. Is this a fee Tottenham will have to pay if we want to get him out of this job at Sporting? I would imagine so. Is it one that Tottenham will pay is another question. After finishing third after the few months in charge heading into the 2021 season, Amorim made a whole host of changes. He let a lot of experienced players lead the club and brought in players like Pedro Porro, now at Tottenham, Pedro Gonçalves, very highly sought after in world football, and scored that wonder goal versus Arsenal. Mateus Nunes, now at Wolves, Paulinho, now at Fulham, and Nuno Mendes, who has since moved on to PSG. He used all these players to kickstart his revolution at Sporting. Amorim finished out his first full season in charge, winning his second League Cup as manager, while also guiding Sporting to the first Portuguese league title in 19 years and setting a national record of 32 games unbeaten. New recruit Pedro Gonçalves scoring 23 goals that season. Amorim only lost one match that season away to Benfica and won Portuguese Manager of the Year in recognition of his work. In his second summer transfer window, Amorim set about upgrading his team in defensive areas ahead of Sporting's European campaign, with most notable being defensive midfielder Manuel Ugarte, who is currently being linked with a whole host of European clubs. There is something he must be allowed to do at Tottenham if he is to get the job, which is reinforce that defence. He secured Sporting's path to a round of 16 for the first time since 2008, beating Dortmund 3-1 along the way, where they were eventually eliminated by Man City in the last 16. In the January transfer window of that season, Amorim brought in former Spurs Youth Academy product Marcus Edwards, where he has since gone on to thrive, and I reckon he'll be one of the next players to leave Sporting and head to the Premier League. Amorim also went on to his third Portuguese League Cup in as many years. But although finishing on 86 points, the same as the season prior, before, it was only enough to finish second, 6 points behind the eventual winners. That brings us into this season. Sporting actually enjoyed a disappointing start to their domestic campaign after losing key influential players like Paulinho to Fulham and Mateus Nunes to Wolves. Despite domestically starting off slow, they took some big scalps in the Champions League group stages, beating Frankfurt away, but most notable with their 2-0 dismantling of our great club, Tottenham Hotspur. However, them victories were not enough to see them progress to the last 16, so they finished third and dropped down to the Europa League, where they recently knocked out Premier League leaders Arsenal to progress to the quarterfinals after Pedro Gonçalves' spectacular equaliser, bringing it to penalties. I would not bet against them winning the Europa League this season with Amorim's form in cups. He also clinched Sporting's third Portuguese League Cup in a row and his fourth in a row this season, and Sporting currently sit fourth in the Portuguese League, 18 points off league leaders Benfica. So let's get into talking about his playing style and his tactics. Amorim is known for his communication skills and tactical knowledge and flexibility. Amorim does favour the 3-4-3 possession-based game with two holding midfielders protecting the back line, with the emphasis on the two wing-backs to get forward and support and contribute to the attacking play. He also has been known to vary up a bit and play a 3-4-3 diamond version of that formation depending on the opposition. So anyone who's not a fan of Conte's 3 at the back system with wing-backs, Amorim should not be your preferred choice. His system also relies heavily on building out from the back, so he will also need the defenders who are comfortable on the ball to implement his system and style of play. In defense, he uses a 5-2-3 or a 5-4-1 formation depending on the opposition. He also encourages the team to sit in a low block at times to keep a compact shape to limit attacking opportunities, very similar to Conte. However, he does actually look for the front three to get pressure on the ball, block up the middle and force the opposition out wide with the ball. When they go outside with the ball, it's actually forced them into a trap, because the wing back, depending on what side the ball is on, he springs out and looks to put pressure on the ball, as well as that centre midfielder looks to come across, leaving the opposition player outnumbered. Amorim's eye-catching brand of football that brings results and success is what has led him to rise through the ranks very, very quickly, and is why he is being linked with Europe's biggest clubs, including Tottenham Hotspur. Now it's just a question of, will Tottenham pay the 30 million to get him out of his contract, and what is Amorim's ambitions? One thing for sure, if he does not join Tottenham, I think we will definitely see him in the Premier League very, very soon. Now it's time to take a deeper delve into the Spanish surfer.
Luis Enrique here, everybody. The Spanish surfer. He started out with Barcelona B squad in 2008, succeeding Pep Guardiola, and in his second season, he found success helping the Barcelona B squad return to the second division of Spain after an absence of 11 years. And Luis Enrique then went on to actually manage Roma, where he infamously butted heads, figuratively, of course, with the likes of Francesco Totti. And after failing to qualify for Europe and being knocked out in the Europa League that season, Enrique quit the Roma job 2 years early and quit 2 years remaining on his contract still. He returned back to Spain, where he became Celta Vigo manager and led the team to a ninth place finish that season. He went on to actually leave Celta Vigo after that season to join Barcelona over in 2014. He is known mostly for his success at Barcelona during the years of 2014 through 2017, where he found a perfect formula to fit in Messi, Neymar, and Suarez into a front three. He'd gotten into some disputes with Messi, but eventually found a winning groove with the team and its stars and equaled Guardiola's record of an 11-game unbeaten run. In April 2015, after a 2-0 win over PSG, Enrique recorded his 42nd win out of 50 games, the best record of any Barcelona manager over that length of games. That season, Enrique and his Barcelona team went on to win the Champions League, securing a treble-winning season. In his 2015-2016 campaign, he won a domestic double, securing the league title as well as the Copa del Rey. In his first 2 seasons, Enrique actually statistically finished even higher, with an even higher win percentage than Guardiola, and also had scored more goals and conceded fewer in that length of time than Guardiola's Barcelona team as well. The following season, Enrique announced in March that he would not continue as manager after the season. They won the Copa del Rey final in 2017, but they did fail to win the league. During his time as the Spanish national team manager, Enrique was able to incorporate younger Spanish talents into the team, and they performed respectively well in the Euros in 2020, losing to eventual winners Italy on penalties. In the Qatar World Cup, Enrique's Spanish team performed impressively in the group stages, but was shockingly knocked out on penalties for a second time by underdogs Morocco. Now let's talk about Enrique's tactics here, everybody. While still possession heavy and dominant, like a lot of Spanish managers, his Barcelona as well as his Spain side, I would say, play a lot more quicker, as well as transition maybe out of the defense a lot quicker than maybe other teams that maybe you would see out of Spain, especially Guardiola's FC Barcelona. At Barcelona, Enrique mostly deployed, I would say, a 4-3-3. The creativity came mostly through the wingers of Messi and Neymar, who drop inside as well as drop into those sort of half spaces to pick up the ball and turn. He transformed Barcelona's midfield, giving a more prominent role to guys like Ivan Rakitic, and actually dropping out players like Iniesta as well as Xavi from their sort of important as well as pivotal roles in the side. He has shown to not really be afraid to drop or really take out star players or personalities out of a team. Like I said before, he, infamously sort of kind of clashed with Totti as well as Messi in his time period. And in his third year at Barcelona, Enrique occasionally did deploy actually a 3-4-3, which we're familiar with at Spurs. But Messi would actually act as more of a false nine to form a midfield diamond to act as maybe the chief creator in the team. This system brought out the best, I think, of Neymar, who's always so fabulous at cutting inside, at being able to bring in Suarez into the play. And then this change also was this change into the 3-4-3 was also instrumental in getting FC Barcelona's 6-1 win over PSG in the second leg to recover from their initial embarrassing 4-0 defeat, everybody. For Spain, Enrique, I think, has continued to use the 4-3-3 with a lot of play really heavily reliant on Busquets, as well as those box-to-box creative midfield sensations of Pedri as well as Gavi. Enrique's Spain side also had the center forward, I think, drop very deep to help bring others into play. And the wingers, I would say, were a bit more positionally versatile than you would say other wingers in other kind of systems across Europe. His Spain side pressed high up the pitch to win the ball back. Watch back all of the World Cup matches, and especially watch back, I think, their game against Germany, where they basically just went toe-to-toe with them in pretty much every sense, and also went toe-to-toe with them with their own version of a high press. But everybody, That's our guide to the managers who've been regularly linked with Spurs since Antonio Conte's rumored departure. Please, please, please leave a comment down below for who do you want to take over from Antonio Conte, and let us know as well who do you think should be coming into the Spurs job. But Dave, what else should they know?
Make sure you absolutely smash that like button. Let's get it over 100 likes, even 200 likes. Feel free. A lot of work has gone into this video to use the super thanks option, or grab yourself a channel membership to support the work we're trying to do here. And most importantly, let us know in the comments, like Jack said, who you want to see take charge. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.